Hello, this is Annette with Project Refine Life. Welcome to my channel. Today I am here to talk to you about grief and using the tarot for grief. There was a horrendous thing that happened, and I'm sitting here at my desk, and as a mother who has lost a child, I am just floored by this. And I'm trying to cope with that because what it does is it brings up all these feelings for me. And I hurt so much for the people, the families that are experiencing this loss at this time. I just feel so much for those children and just what the families will go through. So I'm not here as an expert on grief. I'm not here saying that I have gone to school and studied it. I'm saying that I've lived through it and living with it. I'm here just to speak to you today about some of the things that I have used and done to get through grief. And you know, there was a video put out, unfortunately she had to delete it, but it's about what's in the name. The original video was put out by She Walks in Beauty, but Susie Gemini did a VR and the original video had since been taken down. However, what's in the name of my channel comes from grief and healing and dealing with grief as a result of losing my 17-year-old son. Project Refine Life, and I think I've mentioned this on another video, but if you're new to my channel, you might not know, but I lost my son when he was 17. He and his friend were killed by a drunk driver. Things like this don't make any sense. Things like this, you don't see a person go from healthy to a point where you know that you're losing them. They're sudden in their grief and all of a sudden your baby's just not coming home. Seeing things like this come up and seeing that 19 children aren't coming home, it really just tears me up. Again, I'm coming to this from a point of a parent who is grieving or whatever it is that you could be grieving. The tarot has helped me immensely with dealing with it, with journaling through it, with just being present through it. So I found a couple of articles that I thought that I would share some information from for you, and I will link them. But I also wanted to share a couple of tarot cards with you that I think you'll find that even though it's the same tarot card, you're journaling, and I'm going to go ahead and show you my journal. You're journaling with them on that particular day could be entirely different than it is 3 days later or a day later. So these are just some things to consider if you need to sit down and really put things into words or just to think on some of these subjects. One of the cards, or one of the decks rather, that I use is the Gentle Tarot because it is just so beautifully done, so gentle, so purposeful. And what I did is I pulled a few cards just to kind of tell the story of grief and this transformation of grief and this idea that your loved one isn't going to come back puts you into this state of complete transformation. You know, when I lost my son at his funeral, one of my old neighbors came up and told me, "Annette, you're never going to be the same again. You're never going to get over this." And at the moment I thought, oh my gosh, why did she just say this to me? You know, here I was at his funeral and she said this to me and I just thought, oh my gosh, that was the worst advice ever. But you know what? She was right. She was absolutely right. I have never been the same again. And it's not that it's necessarily a bad thing. Yes, I still grieve, and you can probably hear that in my voice today. But it brought me to a new state of being, I needed to refine my life after this. It took me years to get to the point that I am today. And it took me years of searching and trying to figure out, you know, what the heck was going on? How was I going to get through this? How was I going to manage this Three of Swords moment where I am just taken by this grief, just trying to get through it? It is the most difficult thing ever. I've lost my parents, and I know what that feels like. And I've lost my son, and I can tell you that for me, two extremely, extremely different things. I don't really even know sometimes how I got through from one day to the next. And I remember and I always say this, that it just took me a moment to even figure out how I was going to get to the next breath. The pain just was so intense. My husband sat by and watched. My sister was always there. She is the reason that I made it through, because even today, with hearing this news from yesterday and looking at it this morning, I had to call her and say, oh my goodness, I don't know. I don't know what I'm feeling with this today. It really is just something that cannot be described. Trying to get through these moments and journaling and working with these energies of not only the tarot, but also crystals, finding this outpouring of healing and putting the idea of almost holding a crystal and putting everything into it. I used to get stones, and even in my Reiki, if it has to do with grief Reiki, I will have somebody hold a stone and just imagine them pouring everything into that stone, and then they can figure out what they want to do with that. Like if they want to keep it, if they want to hold it, if they want to release it. And if so, what do you do with it? Because it's not just pushing it, then you have to, pushing it into some capacity or something that holds it for you, a space that holds it for you. It's okay, now that you have this, what do you do with it? How do you work with it? When your emotions are just everywhere, like the Five of Cups just spilling everywhere, what do you do with those emotions? How do you manage that? Especially when you lose sight, during this time, you lose sight. You don't know what to do with everything that you're feeling. Nobody's taught how to manage this, and you are pretty much moment by moment dealing with it. Coming to that realization, that Ten of Swords moment where you realize this is real. I've lost this forever. This is not coming back. It is really, really difficult. It's really hard to describe all the insight. And you're going to hear my computer in the background. This is not where I normally film. Lately, I am up at my laptop upstairs because, like I said, I was just up here and just trying to deal with some of this. When you come to that moment when you realize they're not coming back, like how do I manage this? You get to that point where you are angry, where you're almost in a point of being combative, and how can I fix this? What can I do to fix this? How can I keep what I feel is mine? And that is an honest feeling of how you're dealing with things. As you can see, I'm just bringing out cards and just kind of talking through this. Somehow or another, it just kind of makes sense to me when I'm doing this. But you get to that point of like bargaining, like where this is the Seven of Stones in the Gentle Tarot, but like what options do I have available? How can I do this? And almost this point of bargaining to the point like, what can I do to bring him back? What do I need to do to have that back in my life? It is intense, to say the least. It is just something that can't even be measured, going back to the Five of Cups. And you get to the point where you think like, how do I even carry on from this? What do I do with this? How do I manage all of this? it's a point where you go within that hermit phase where you just have to retreat. And, you know, I had a lot of friends before all of this happened, and I really did go deep into this hermit moment. And I really got really selective with who I allow into my life and how. And I don't know if it's good or bad. I think I'm far more selective with my friends and how I maintain my relationships, but I needed strength. I needed strength to continue. And there was a few people that I still contact or am in communication with, and some that I just don't. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's a strength that I needed at the time in order to, I don't know, just keep going through it, you know? You get to a point as well where you get to looking for the answers and clarification and make this right. And sometimes you're not going to get the judgment or the outcome, showing the judgment card, the outcome that you want or that you feel is fair. And when you're in that spot of feeling that nothing is fair or right, and then you also get to this spot, and this may be such a convoluted conversation because I'm just shooting from the hip here, guys. But you get to that point where you start judging yourself too, like, what did I do? I shouldn't have, like, in these parents' eyes, they're probably going to think like, oh, he was going to stay home today or she was going to stay home today, and I told them to go to school. And if I wasn't working, then maybe it could have been different, or I could have homeschooled. None of that helps. I'm going to tell you right now, it is a stage that you go through, and it's understandable, but none of that helps you get through this tower, this moment of destruction. And you really need to reach down to your foundations. You really need to find the foundations. And that's what led me to being Project Refine Life, or to creating Project Refine Life. Like I've said before Project Refine Life was on YouTube, it was created a long time before that. I started a blog, and before that I just started journaling, just started writing. I would write notes to my son because I needed that foundation, and I knew that things were never going to be the same. And in that, like, you find a lot of shadow. You find a lot of shadow, and sometimes all of it just feels like it's just too much to bear. It really does. But I am here to tell you that finding the right friends and being within the right support system and finding your foundation, or refinding a foundation that works for you in this moment in time. Things are going to change. Things will not be the same. Things will, in fact, be different. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be all right with knowing that it's not going to be the same. You will change. Everything will change. You know, there's these steps. There's these 5 steps of grief. First comes the denial. You know, I remember calling a friend of mine when this all happened, right fresh when this all happened, and I knew my family was coming down to see me, to talk to me, to be with me at this time. Everybody was heading down to be with me. And I called her up and I said, they're lying. Why are they lying to me? This isn't happening. It's not real. You know, that 7 of Swords type moment, like, why? Then you get to the why, the anger, the why me? You know, why is this happening? And then you get to that point of depression, that 5 of Cups type of place. And then acceptance. And acceptance is just kind of all of this. You know, in one of the In one of the articles that I found about acceptance and the tarot with acceptance, you know, they reference death and that transformation. But I mean, if it was so cut and dry and clear, and it's really not, but it's all of these all together, like just being in it and understanding it and working it through and knowing that some days are going to be better than others. And there's nothing you can do about that. You just have to go through it. I send my deepest condolences to these families that are going to be dealing with this for years. I don't know the answer to make it better. I don't know the psychology of getting through it, you know, eloquently or gracefully. You know what? It's a wreck. But I hope and I pray and I send you strength for anybody who's experiencing grief through this time, and for any other time, anytime that you come across this, even if it's not directly related to this particular instance. If you find this video and you are experiencing something, you know, just know that you have this strength inside you, and you do need to anchor yourself and find where you can move into this moment of transformation, this moment of growth. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be light, and it's hard. It's difficult. But find where you can transform your life, because things are going to be different. Find somebody you can talk to. Make your health a priority. These are all real items, and it sounds so silly, you know, but you need to make your health a priority. And then don't ever feel like your grief should be a certain amount of time, because there is no timeline for grief. It comes to you as it needs to come to you, and you manage it the way you need to manage it. The way Susie or Jane managed it is not the way that I managed it. It's just not the same. So even as a parent coming at this approach as a parent, like, my grief is not the same as yours. I'm just here to offer what I've experienced and how I use some of these tools. I talk about tarot a lot here. Tarot is one of the things that I use to deal with it. Crystals, oils, yoga, meditation, breathing exercises, finding that breath. Oh my gosh, it is so important to ground yourself and to find your breath, because I can tell you right now that breathing was a big deal for me. Finding that breath was hard. And validate your feelings. When you're feeling these emotions and this pain, don't discard them. Don't think that they're immaterial, or that you shouldn't be feeling this, or that you shouldn't still be feeling this. Don't ever do that to yourself. Allow yourself to feel and think. Allow yourself that grace, because you need it. And like I said, talk to somebody. And if there's somebody that you don't feel that you can openly talk to about this situation, then seek outside. There is a place called, it's online, it's called Greifshare. And they offer small groups, or support groups rather, that are led by people who are also grieving. And they have places throughout the United States, and I believe Canada and some other countries. I'll include that information as well. But they also have a daily email with words of encouragement, which is really nice. They'll send that for, I think, like a year or something. It's just a short message. But sometimes you need those little messages just to get through whatever it is you're going through on that day. And don't expect that your grief is going to be the same every single day. You're going to hear my chair squeaking here, because I'm moving around just to pull a couple of other little decks that I feel like are really helpful to me sometimes. And this is the Tree Whisper Oracle. This one, I don't even know if this is available anymore. But just, there's no guidebook. It's just these trees and just this one word. And sometimes just pulling this and journaling through this, just the idea of, what are my attachments to this feeling that I'm having right now? How can I be more courageous with going through this today? Where do I set my boundaries? How do I let other people tap in or come into my life? How can I be more in touch with nature to find that grounding? A lot of my practice always comes down to grounding, to getting more in connection with earth. In this particular field that I'm in, everybody's always looking for ascension, go higher, get higher. But gosh, dang it, guys. If more of us were grounded, I don't think we would have some of the experiences that we have and some of the things that we have to go through. I'm always trying to push grounding, integration, knowledge, integrity, stillness. Finding your stillness, that's another thing. Just find some stillness and understand that you're going to go through cycles. It is a doorway. It is an opening to another life. I could keep going on and on through this. And this grief, it is sacred. It is sacred, and it does, if you allow it to help you grow, if you allow it and you experience it, it is. And like I keep saying, find grace and look for healing. This is such a beautiful deck, and this is one of the decks where I find peace, where I just get it and I journal and I work through it. Another deck, and I know this is not available, but I'm just sharing with you some of the decks that I work with for this work, and that's the Healing Waves Tarot. This deck is it's really pretty. Actually, the art style it's a little different than my usual art style, but I find this deck very, very useful for healing. So look for the decks that you have, if you're working with tarot and oracle, that offer that type of relief, or that way to just get you to open up and think about, your grief, how to process it. Another deck that I use is the Rose Alchemy, the Rose Oracle for the Heart. And this deck is just filled with roses. Now, my mom had roses outside of her house. She had tons of rose bushes and she loved roses. So when I see roses, and to me, like when I was growing up, like there was a lot of stuff going on when I grew up. So I think she had these roses as a way to get through her grief. And the guidebook is very much set to that way of opening up the lines of communication between yourself and spirit, and just working through things. I'm just sharing a couple with you guys because I just felt like it was necessary to remind yourself to look for the things that just help you through, that help you get through things. There is no right way, there is no wrong way, there is just the way of getting through it. There's no grand offerings that I have here. It's just recognize what you're going through, recognize what it is that you're feeling, and feel it. Be okay with feeling it, because another thing that I was told is, oh, in a year you'll be fine. No, I'm not. I'm not fine. We're going on 17 years. In July, it will be 17 years that I lost my son. Do I sound fine? I'm not fine today. I'm not okay today. But I'm okay with not being okay. I know it sounds ridiculous, right? Very cliche, but that is the reality. That is the truth. And I'm sorry for the dim lighting in here, but like I said, I just wanted to put this out there. This is a rambling, and it might not make sense to people, and I hope I don't trigger any people, but I just needed to speak on grief because that's what Project Refine Life was born from. I'm the project. I'm trying to refine my life one day at a time. My body, my mind, my soul, just trying to get me better every single day. And through this process, I've learned a lot of things. I've sought a lot of wisdom. I've researched, I've read, I've taken courses and classes and everything that I can get my hands on, everything that I can listen to, everything that I can observe. I take life more seriously now. I mean, not that I didn't before. I was always grateful for us waking up and being alive and being in the moment. But now everything's more serious and everything's more laughable as well. Everything finds more love. And I'm so drawn to tears so easily. I don't know if that's age or my experiences, I'm not quite sure, but Project Refine Life was born from grief, from getting through, from refining, trying to be better, from trying to be more aware. And like I said before, I didn't receive the answers that I needed in the ways that you're told to seek them. You know, and I'm going to just say it, attend Bible studies, to do this, go to this. None of that worked for me. I really had to find my own way, and this is the way. For me, this is the way. So bring your journal out, get your computer. I started just journaling on a computer, and I would just write letters to my son. Like I said earlier, I would just write letters to him. Find what works for you. There's no right way, there's no wrong way. But to all the families who are grieving through this, or if you're grieving through this, find help. You know, whether it be a friend or a spouse or a grief counseling group, find somebody to talk to. Use the tarot. You know, it is a great, it's a great stand-in for people at a moment where you just need to be within that hermit moment and going through things and just journaling. And you're going to find that you can pull the same card and it can mean something very different to you from one day to the next. That's all I have to offer today, guys, but I appreciate you watching and just being part of it all. Thank you so much. I wish you love and healing and strength from my heart to yours. I will see you later.